Do you believe in God?
I believe there's some explanation for this universe, which you might call God. People get very defensive about religion because it's like, they'll sort of identify themselves by a particular religion. Well, it's certainly it would be a change to say, like, let's pursue an expansion of consciousness in order to understand the nature of reality. Whereas if you say, no, I do understand the nature of reality because I believe in this religion or that religion, and that is my explanation for reality, which is how a lot of people would view things.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I mean, it's one doesn't want to get into a religious debate. It's just going to be a different path that people follow if they, take religion at face value versus take the position that we don't know what's going on and we want to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a different set of actions. And I don't really have any issue with religion, provided that we just generally go in a direction that furthers consciousness.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, if a religion results in more people being created, and the atheists not having kids, then, well, it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Are you religious at all?
I would say I generally agree with the teachings of Christianity, but I'm not religious. Like, I agree with.
Do you believe in a higher power?
And like turn the other cheek and love thy neighbor as thyself and that kind of thing. I think those are good principles.
The teachings of yeah.
Yeah, I think good principles.
But do you believe in like a god or like a higher power?
Well, something created the universe, or the universe is, here. How did it come to be? You could say whatever caused the universe to come to be is God, or gods, depending on your view. I don't know. I think as a philosophy that I think makes sense is to go out there and to expand consciousness so that we're better able to answer the questions of, like, what is the meaning of life, what is the nature of the universe, what are even the right questions to ask. And if we can expand consciousness, more humans and more digital intelligence, then our opportunity to understand the meaning of life is that much greater. And so I would I have the philosophy of curiosity to understand the nature of reality.
So you've never practiced any religions?
No, I was I was sent to weirdly a Hebrew preschool. I'm not Jewish, but my dad sent me there because it was like nearby, and I guess his partners in his engineering firm, they sent their kids there. So so I was at Hebrew preschool and then Anglican Sunday school. And so it was like Havana Gila one day and Jesus Zalo the next, So, but I would say that I've never been particularly religious.
Do you have an answer for what the meaning of life is?
Well, I think currently the thing to do is to expand humanity and consciousness to the point where we're able to answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can answer that question yet, or we can't answer what's the meaning of life well yet. Well, we can say step by step, based on the archaeological evidence, the fossil record, and what we know of physics, how we came to be at this point. But that doesn't explain how the universe came to exist in the first place. Like, how do molecules have consciousness and feelings? The chain of events from a physics standpoint, from the beginning of the universe to now, are quite well understood.
Really?
Yeah. But somehow we're from a bunch of hydrogen gas to complex molecules, and then an assemblage of complex molecules like ourselves that can feel and talk and think. So, I mean, just if you leave hydrogen out long enough, it starts talking to itself, basically. That's what happened here.
Do you have a spiritual life?
Well, it sort of depends on what spiritual means.
So what do you think spiritual means? I mean, it is one of those words that kind of needs to be defined for everyone. Some people, it's like their religion, and it's a very specific kind of thing. For some people, it's a very vague kind of yoga and crystals, and
I mean, maybe there's some dimension where thoughts exist or something. Because I don't, what is a thought? What is it even? Is it? I mean, I'm not sure what thoughts are. Whether there's some manifestation of thought in a way that is different from the physical dimensions we're aware of. And there's certainly things that we don't understand about the universe. But I'm less convinced that there's, say, some super consciousness watching over our every movement and kind of evaluating it against some criteria, and deciding whether we're going to go to one place or another when we die. I think that's unlikely.
Right. I think that's very unlikely too. I personally do believe in God, but I don't define God in that way. I would define God as closer to being like science,
right?
Or the energy, the laws that propel science, because science really quantifies. So what is it quantifying?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it does beg the question: if there is some super consciousness, where did the super consciousness come from? So I think the most likely explanation is that complexity evolved from simplicity. That the simple elements over time combined to become more complex and arrived at what we are. Yeah, I mean, when I grew up, I was, funnily enough, I went to Anglican Sunday school, Church of England, basically, but I was also sent to Hebrew preschool. Although I'm not Jewish, but nonetheless, I was singing Hava Nagila one day and Jesus is our Lord the next. And so it's fine if you're a kid, and Santa Claus, and like, so. Do you have favorite clothes? I mean, at one point, I when I was a kid, I was like, I had this existential crisis, and I was trying to figure out what's the meaning of life, and I was like, oh, it all means nothing. It's all, and I read like a whole bunch of religious books, including the Bible, and I'm like, God sure changes his mind from the Old Testament to the New Testament. I'm like, whoa, that's pretty vengeful in the Old Testament. I mean, let's just say, like, I agree with the principles that Jesus advocated, and that there's great wisdom in the teachings of Jesus, and I agree with those teachings. And things like turn the other cheek are very important, because as opposed to an eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. So forgiveness, is important, and treating people as you would wish to be treated. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Very important.
So it's like a 60-70% yes?
As Einstein would say, I believe in the God of Spinoza. But hey, if Jesus is saving people, I mean, I wouldn't stand in his way. Like, they'll be sure, I'll be saved. Why not?